Hi guys, Denny here from Masterteach. You know I'm not a master teacher, but I know a lot about teaching. 45 years experience, I know a lot about teachers and teaching. So let's talk about teachers. Let's talk about respect and what does that mean in this workplace these days. I have a feeling for me it means something different to what it means for other people. However, let's have a look at what it's like to be a young teacher in New Zealand or in any other country, just a beginning teacher. What does it feel like? Well, I'm thinking back to my days as a beginning teacher, and I think it was relatively simple because actually I knew what I had to do. I might not have got it completely right, and it was a bit of a shock when the kids didn't do it exactly the way I thought it would come out, but at least I knew what the job was. These days, the job is so big and so waffly that we don't really know exactly what it is we're trying to do. You might know, I think that's why we're very specific about what the outcomes of each lesson should be, because it's very easy to get off track in teaching. At the same time, getting off track can also mean not teaching across your class. So be very careful about that, because if you're teaching to your learning outcome, it may not be the right one for everybody. So you need to differentiate learning, but we'll talk more about that later. The word respect, I've brought that up mainly because it's hard to have respect when you're a young teacher. And how are you going to build your mana, your respect, in a few months? How can that happen for you? Recently, I had the experience of going into to help someone who had only been teaching for a very short time, months, and I found it really interesting that there was no help available. Now, there should be, but there wasn't. And the other thing about it was that this person had no idea what the role really was. So we're talking about someone who isn't actually experienced as a teacher, but is also not experienced in life or in relationships with other people. So what have you got when you put someone like that in a classroom? Someone who's come from school, been to university, and gone into a classroom, and is surrounded by a lot of very adoring but often quite chaotic children. What does that person do? They don't know what to do, particularly if they haven't had enough practical experiences. Now, COVID has really been a big factor in this as well, because a lot of our teachers who are going out in the last couple of years really honestly have not had very much experience in classrooms, so we can expect to see more of this. This means that schools must support them more than they are actually some are doing very well, but some are not. So we need to expect that those teachers will struggle, and some schools are obviously harder than others. And some schools are more pushed than others in other ways, have more needs. So we need to think about how we respect and build the mana of our young teachers. And that's around experiences, it's around support, it's around mentoring, and it's around self-reflection for them and good feedback. Good, constructive, positively based feedback for those young teachers. You don't have to say very much to anybody to make them feel undervalued. I could undervalue my dog at the moment because he's staring at me. So you don't have to say a lot to anybody to make them feel undervalued. All you have to do is give them the impression that you're not very impressed. So you as the person who is the mentor, you as the person who is the leader, whether you're a team leader or a principal or you're whoever you may be, the associate teacher, whatever we call them in these days, learning support person, whoever you are, you might be the Senko. So you have to choose your words very carefully because we need our teachers, all of us. We need these young teachers to be nurtured and built, and their capability to be built until we have a whole generation of good, solid teachers who will become teacher models. That's what is needed. And if you're destroying their confidence by picking holes in their teaching, please, could you do this selectively? Don't pick holes in them either, but do it selectively. You don't need to, you actually don't need to pull out everything that somebody's doing that you consider to be wrong. Actually, you may be wrong. But however, don't pull out every single thing. And certainly never growl at somebody or be negative or give negative feedback to somebody more than once in a 3 to 4 weeks. Don't do that. And defuse and debrief them from what's happened before. Don't just leave it as though nothing's happened in between and then act surprised when it all goes wrong. And do offer the support. Don't just offer it verbally. Do something about it. Actually show them, model, demonstrate. And you're going to be saying, aren't you, leaders? You're going to be saying to me, but I don't have time for that. Well, you've got time to tell them what they're doing wrong. You've got time to get other people to come into the school to help you to tell them. You've got time to write letters about them or whatever you're going, reports about them or give them written feedback. You don't have time to actually help them. Now, I sympathise in some ways with leadership because actually there is a problem with the way that we select and the way that we train our young teachers. And they need much more training than they're getting and much more targeted training around practical situations that they will actually encounter in schools. There's no question in my mind about that. There is no question in my mind that they need to understand neurodiversity, but they need to understand how to manage it in a classroom. And I can tell you right now that is never going to be successful in a 100% way. That is always going to be an issue, and you will get the people who say yes to it and the people who say no to it and the people who are too frightened to say anything. Well, I'm not too frightened. I'm saying what I think here, and I've made that commitment to myself that these videos will tell the truth. They are Denny's truth. If you don't believe in them, fine, I don't care. Don't watch my videos, as I always say. But you may not agree with everything. Maybe because of the way videos are made that you might find that some of the things I say come across a bit harsh. But it's better to be a bit harsh and pull those band-aids off than leave things unsaid. So look after our young teachers. Do the job you're meant to do. Go out there and mentor them. If someone does something wrong, and I don't care if it's a young teacher or if it's an older teacher or anybody, respect them when you have to speak to them. When you have to have a discussion, which may not always go the way that you think it's going to go, you always respect them. And choose your words very carefully. Don't be abrasive and abrupt and rude and condescending. Don't do any of those things. Be particularly mindful of the fact that we're in New Zealand, and New Zealand has a culture of aroha and manakitanga. We don't do that here. Now, if you're in another part of the world, I know for a fact, for example, the UK is a very polite place. And now there are a lot of different cultures living in the UK, and from what I'm seeing, there is a lot of work going on with regard to understanding other cultures. So let's celebrate that, but at the same time as celebrating that, could you please take into account that we need our teachers, and the best communication comes out of good relationships, not poor ones. Thank you.